For more insights, let's bring in Stephen Nagy, Professor of Politics and International Studies at the International Christian University. And he is speaking to us all the way from Budapest. Well, thanks very much, Prof, for joining us this evening. So tomorrow is a pretty big deal. It marks the first full summit between President Yi and also Prime Minister Shigeru. Perhaps tell us why this meeting matters and also what it tells us about Korea-Japan ties today.
Well, thank you very much for having me. I think what's important is that President Yi has really changed the tone of discussions about Japan-Korea relations. We were expecting a much harder line on bilateral relations, a real focus on contentious issues such as labor issues, comfort women issues, and really a withdrawal from President Yoon, the previous president's positions on the Pacific, on cooperation on semiconductors, and on China. And what we've seen is, again, as you alluded to in the prelude to this interview, that President Yi has discussed and said that Japan is an important neighbor. They have to find ways to cooperate in the economic sphere and the security sphere, and that they need to cooperate on their most important bilateral partner, that is the United States. And in this sense, I think President Yi's visit is very important to start the process of not only bilateral relations, but trilateral relations with the United States as well.
And of course, this meeting comes with timing that's very deliberate. President Yi is in Tokyo before heading to Washington, where he's supposed to meet President Trump. So what message do you think he's sending here with this order of visit?
So what all the allies, including South Koreans and the Japanese, are saying is that they are willing to increase their burden sharing in terms of their bilateral alliances with the United States, that they're interested in improving the minilateral cooperation that exists between these three states. And they want to do this not only for their own security, but they want to demonstrate to President Trump's transactional diplomacy in his White House that allies are not only stepping up to the plate for themselves, but they want to step up the plate for the United States. I think, which is a key aspect of how Mr. Trump thinks about alliances. He sees them as fundamentally as a transactional approach to diplomacy rather than this an approach to diplomacy that focuses on shared values and shared interests.
Yeah, so looking ahead to Washington, the U.S., their role looms large. I mean, under Biden, Washington was pushing for Seoul and Tokyo, to set aside all their historical differences. But now we've got Trump, and as you've mentioned, it's all about transaction with him. But do you expect that approach to also continue with the Trump administration?
Nobody really knows. I think President Trump can shift from the left to the right very quickly in any of his diplomacy. We saw this with President Zelensky and his disastrous visit to the White House back in February, and then being embraced 3 weeks later in the Vatican. So I think the Korean leader is very cautious going into the White House. Is going to come and deliver goods to President Trump to demonstrate that, again, that the South Koreans are stepping up to the plate in terms of security, stepping up to the plate in terms of trade and economy, and opening their economy to the United States. And I think that this will continue to be the approach. What's interesting, again, is that President Yi is working with the Japanese to some extent to try and demonstrate that there's a shared approach to security and trade within the region, and that they want to send that message to the Trump administration that we're on your side, we're willing to step up to the plate and do much more, and we value your relationship, and that we're going to continue to invest in this relationship despite some of the challenges of the Trump diplomatic style, which really complicates issues for the political leaders, not only in South Korea and Japan, but throughout the region. It's a very unorthodox style that is not as conducive to the more inflexible political systems that exist in particular in the Indo-Pacific region.
So U.S.-China rivalry, global supply chain risk, all of that pressure perhaps pushing the two countries closer together. But closer economic ties are also being explored, I believe. And South Korea and Japan, I mean, their strengths seem to complement each other. We've got semiconductors, batteries, hydrogen, etc. These synergies, do you think they could lead to lasting economic partnerships?
Well, first, they have to have a shared strategic understanding of where they'd like to take their economies. So on semiconductors, there has been, I think, a convergence and understanding that there's an important need to cooperate on relocating some semiconductor production away from the Taiwan-China nexus. And in order to do that, they need to cooperate not only between them, but the Netherlands, the United States, and other countries. So I think this is an area that there is some strategic convergence. Two, developing new kinds of semiconductor productions. So here we don't see the Japanese and South Koreans aligned. The Japanese have invested heavily in an organization or a business called Rapidus, hoping to leapfrog some of the technological advantages of TMC semiconductor production across the Taiwan Straits, and the South Koreans aren't there. And then in terms of supply chain diversification, we see South Korean and Japanese businesses competing rather than cooperating in the key diversification areas such as Southeast Asia and Japan, or Southeast Asia and India. So they're on the same page in the book in some areas. In other areas, they need to develop more strategic convergence and find ways for their businesses to cooperate, to collectively gain from that cooperation, and to, again, share that same strategic vision.
Some great insights there. Always great speaking with you. Thanks so much for your time and thoughts. Stephen Nagy, Professor of Politics and International Studies at the International Christian University.